Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. We do have, as you guys probably know, or maybe you don't know, but you're going to learn pretty soon, we do have the U.S. Chess Championship going on right now. So we're going to see, who is going to be crowned the king and queen of the world. No, I'm playing the U.S. I appreciate everybody very much. Anybody who's coming from the Philippines, as always, I will say mabuhay hi to you. Maligan Young Park Dotting saw my chest, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Leinier Dominguez-Perez is from Cuba. Anybody who is coming from Cuba, I will say bienvenidos ajedrez, damas y caballeros. Muchas gracias para ver mi video y mi YouTube. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. But man, if you guys are ready to go, this is of course round one. So let's see what we got rolling. So we got the move e4. So basically white is just, this is definitely one of the best opening moves. It's not like it's absolutely 100% the best, but it does have a lot of logic behind it. Of course, you're trying to let like your bishop out, your queen out. You're trying to get castle pretty quick. You're basically just trying to use your initiative wisely. So black basically says, bro, I'm doing the same thing you doing, homie. And white is basically saying after knight to f3, if you want to keep doing the same thing I'm doing, it might get kind of dicey because, the symmetry and everything. So you got to be kind of careful. So what white is doing is they are maintaining their initiative and they are attacking the e5 pawn for black. Definitely, like I said, black is aiming to try to do the same things that white is trying to do. And so black is trying to make it really hard for them to achieve that. So you have a few different ways that are somewhat logical to defend the pawn. And then you have some ways that are just kind of like gambity, and I'm just going to kind of like try to throw you off. So the top two moves by absolute far are going to be knight to c6. Knight to c6 is going to be played basically 10 times more than any other move. The next best move is going to be knight to f6, and basically black is like, I'm just going to counterattack you instead of defending my pawn, and it is known as the Petrov's defense or the Russian game. So we do see the classical way to defend the pawn, which is knight to c6. Like I said, it's played about 10 times more than knight to f6 is, which is the second top move. And then we have a slight variance from the absolute mainline stuff. We do have the Scotch game, and it is just with the d4 push. You are basically aiming as white to put the maximum amount of pressure on this e5 pawn. And black definitely has a good way, of taking care of that. And we do see that in the game, and that is pawn takes d4. And then we're just going to get into knight takes d4, and this is what we actually see in the game. If we back up, the only other really two ways that you can at all try to do anything if you're on the black side is either go d6 and you're like, I'm just going to defend the pawn, and this is known as a Philidor's defense, or you can actually take here. So if we see something like the Philidor's defense, you would most likely, almost probably by far, see pawn takes e5, and then you kind of are in a little bit of a pickle as black. It gets kind of gambity if you're black, but absolute, one of the best ways to play is just to go pawn takes e5. You are allowing the queen to take. If you really, really want to preserve castling rights, knight's taking, and you are giving up a pawn with knight takes e5. So this isn't ideally the way that you want to go, but like I said, after we got d4, we do have the alternative knight takes, and this actually maintains the material balance, but we do have knight taking, pawn taking, queen taking, and the one issue that you kind of have with this as black is the fact that, white already starts off with the advantage of moving first, and they are a little bit more active in this situation. So you kind of have like two hits against you. So that is why you see Perez go the way he does. Just pawn takes, knight takes. It just keeps everything simple and even. This is fairly even. We do see the move knight to f6. By far, one of the most popular things to do. Some of you guys who play into the Sicilian as white kind of see like some similarities here. Black is basically saying, hey, I'm going to attack your pawn, and you kind of have to do something about it. Because, it's the E pawn, it's the central pawn. You don't really want to just lose that pawn, bro. So we do see knight taking c6, and this is the first time we see well, no, it's not the first time. d4 is the first time, but this is the first time since then that we kind of see just a little step down from the absolute main stuff. Knight takes c6, of course, hitting the queen. So you really don't have anything better than to take. And you are in somewhat of a critical, not super critical, but you're in a situation right here where you do have a couple of options. You do have pawn taking c6, pawn taking c6, either with the b pawn or the d pawn. Both of them are playable. B takes C6 is definitely better. Due to the fact that this is an open D file, you don't necessarily want to go D takes because you're going to basically be getting straight into an endgame with queen taking D8 and the king stepping over. But, I mean, just similar to like the Berlin, it is actually not bad if you do want to do that as black. You know, it's just slightly better if you take with the B pawn. But I will say this, in some situations, you do want to make sure you avoid that trade because it can be, you know, iffy, especially if you have a knight that kind of can jump to E5 or G5 and threaten like a little fork situation. So you got to be kind of careful depending on what type of situation it is. So like I said, we do see B taking C6 and we have an Aliekin's type of an idea. You guys who play against the Aliekin as white, you know, you're basically just trying to chase the knight around. You're like, bro, your knight is attackable, so I'm gonna attack it, homie. So we do see queen taking, queen going to E7, preventing the pawn from capturing because now it's pinned. And then so as white, we unpin. And something that you want to definitely make sure you're noticing is when you do pin down something, when somebody unpins it, it can move. So you want to be kind of careful and make sure you move this knight, bro, because now the pawn is freely movable. So we do see the move knight to D5, and then we actually have the move C4. And we have come to a point in the game that if you do want to pause the video, there is a really great move, and this is a move that Perez does find in the game. So if you want to pause the video and see what move that is, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So I mean, there are a few different moves in this position. It's not like, you know, there's only absolutely one move, but this is slightly the best move in the position. And the move that I'm looking for is actually bishop to A6. Now, as some possible alternatives, I mean, knight going back to B6 was definitely just a move. You know, you're just saving the knight. There was nothing wrong with that. There's also the Zweichenzuge move, yeah, Zweichenzuge. Sometimes I mix up Zugzwang and Zweichenzuge. Anyways, you know, a little in-betweener. You do have queen to B4 check, which I always look for checks in position, so you definitely wouldn't be wrong with those, but it is slightly more accurate just to go bishop to A6, and you are now pinning this pawn down, so you are good to go. We do see the move of B3, just reinforcing the pawn, you know, especially if you got queen going to B4 with check. I mean, it can become an issue if you are not protecting that pawn on C4. So we do see the move G6. And basically, black is like, I'm just going to act like nothing's going on with my knight. I mean, my knight is okay. It's not capturable because of the pin. So white is going to be, you know, looking to try to get rid of that pin at some point so they can just win the knight. I mean, you know, let's just have free knights, bro. So we do see the move G3. We got bishop to G7. Now, you kind of have a little bit of an issue on that diagonal, so you want to cover that. So we got bishop to B2. We got castles by black. And as you guys will notice in the position, we are still pinned on this diagonal right here. So, you know, that pawn is still not movable. So the knight is like, bro, I'm super happy, son. I'm in a I'm lovely in the middle. Anyways, we do see the move bishop to G2. We got rook A to E8, and then we do have castles by white. And the craziest part about it is ever since D4, which was the third top move, and knight taking C6, which was the second top move, both of these players have played the exact absolute top move to this point. Now, I mean, we're not crazy deep in the game. We're just 13 moves deep. But, I mean, just think about it. I mean, both players have played 13 moves, basically like the most, you know, ideal move to play in a position. That's pretty nice. We do have bishop taking E5, queen taking E5, queen taking E5, bishop taking E5, and then rook taking E5. This is actually what we saw in the game. But I just wanted to show something real quick. After the rook A came to E8, some of you might have been thinking, well, wait a minute. Okay, so the threat is against my E5 pawn, right? So can I just defend it with F4? If we do go F4, you do have the possibility as black to go F6. And you're kind of a little bit inconvenienced because not only is F6 threatening to open the F file against your king right here like this, but it is making this E5 pawn very shaky. So it was just a little bit more accurate just to give the pawn up just straight away like we saw in the game. And like I said, we did end up in this position right here. Now, this does lose a piece for black, but you do get some compensation just because of the fact that you have, you know, 2 extra pawns in the situation, and you are going to be getting an exchange. So, of course, you know the computer. The computer's like, bro, it's triple zeros. Like, there's nothing going on here. Like, we're not computers, homie. Computers are crazy. We do see pawn taking D5, bishop taking F1, king taking F1, and then the pawn does take on D5. And then we have a knight coming to c3. And I mean, I looked at this position myself and I was like, man, it's kind of hard to see, like, you know, who I would go with, like, because you have black with the double rooks and you have definitely some couple pawn compensation. And then white, you have 3 pieces, which is an imbalance. Can you make something happen? Is either one of these players going to make something happen? Let's see. You do have Perez he does have a slight advantage in this position right here. We do see the move c6, which is super duper logical. I mean, you definitely have a lot of heat on this pawn here. So, I mean, not only are you protecting the pawn, but you are trying to restrict knight's movement. I mean, the knight, you know, might want to come here and, you know, kind of start attacking stuff or even try to plop into d6. You know, it can cause a little bit of trouble for you. So we do see knight to a4. Now, you do kind of want to be a little bit careful here because I think some people might be like, oh, well, we're restricting knights, right? So let's go ahead and go d6, and then there can't be a knight to c5 situation. The problem is that is going to give yourself a little bit of a liability as far as your structure is concerned. What we actually see in the game is not caring about any of that and going rook f to e8. But let's say we did see the move d6. Now, it is, I mean, it's somewhat subtle, but it's one of those types of understanding of positional play. And, you know, you'll understand why this move is a bad idea. One of the main ideas is going to be rook over to c1. And so basically what you just did by moving to d6 is, yeah, you restricted the knight to c5. But the problem is you have given yourself a backward pawn that is really kind of hard to push. And you definitely, one of the things you also want to be thinking about as black is not opening up the position at all, because this bishop can become quite a monster, you know, if the position does become open. So you are playing against that possibility. So you don't necessarily want to go pushing pawns again because you are weakening your pawn structure right there. So that's why Perez decides that he wants to just maintain this structure. And this is doing a good job right here of blunting this bishop, which is definitely a positional strategy. We do see, like I said, rook f to e8, and then we do see the move bishop to f3. Now, one of the other things is, what do you want to do if you have some rooks? Put them on the 7th. So we were really definitely eyeing to try to come down to e2, and bishop to f3 just cancels that out. So at least you're still able to use your bishop to some degree. We do see king over to f8. And instead of going to d6, like I said before, black has the idea of bringing their king over to defend things. So the knight does go to c5, and we got king to e7. So now we have managed to save our pawn on d7. We do see the knight going down to d3. So one of the things that white is doing good, when you have an imbalance, especially when you got like 2 minor pieces against a rook, you know, or you have an open file just in general, you do want to try to control all of the entry points for, you know, your rook. And if you notice, this square, this square, this square, this square, and now this square is controlled by all of white's pieces. So you are not really giving black the ability to penetrate into your position at all. So we do see the rook going back to e6, and, you know, white's trying to make some progress. We do see the move knight to f4, asking black what does it want to do. Of course, black does not want to move to either one of these sides because you're just giving, you know, too much. You really want to keep your rook on the open file. So that is what we actually see. The rook comes down to e5. We see knight down to d5. Rook goes back up to e6, and then we tickle it on c5. The rook comes back down to e5, knight down to d3, and then we have a rook back up to e6, and we do have a draw by 3-fold repetition. And the crazy thing about this particular game is that both players played almost 100% like the entire game. So Wesley So played 99.6% and Perez played 99.5%. And the other crazy thing is we had no novelties in this game. The entire game is known to theory. So that is why you didn't hear me mention the novelty at all. So it is a very interesting situation. I mean, it has some little, you know, interesting things in it. But we did, like I said, fizzle into a draw. So that is that first round game. I will jump back on and, you know, see what we got rolling tomorrow, see who Wesley plays. And I will definitely cover that game. So I appreciate you guys very much, and I'll see y'all next time.